Why hard Nietzscheans? Why hard Nietzscheans? After many years of trying to discuss Nietzsche in various forums, in various classes, on various courses, and on the internet and everywhere else, I found I was always hitting the same barrier. There were certain aspects of Nietzsche that weren't encouraged. And if you brought them up or brought them out, quoted them even, just spoke about them, they were streng verboten. No, that could not be said. And I was banned, I was censored, I was shut out, I was condemned, I was looked down upon because I wanted to speak about those forbidden aspects of Nietzsche. And why? Those aspects of Nietzsche are freely available in his books and have been since he was alive. He published these things when he was alive in most cases. And they stand upon the bookshelves of the libraries, the bookshops, and they are on the internet and everywhere else, freely available. And yet they don't make their way into the books of selections in the current academe. They are sneered at on the mainstream. They are the parts of Nietzsche that are best veiled and hidden. They're the parts they don't want to talk about. And I realized after a while that those aspects of Nietzsche that I got excited by, that I wanted to talk about, those aspects that were censored and banned, just as I was censored and banned, those aspects were what we might now call, and I do call now, tough Nietzschean. Sometimes hard Nietzschean, tough Nietzschean. You get the drift. I call it the true Nietzschean as well. It is the Nietzsche as he was, the Nietzsche who wrote in the 19th century, Nietzsche that the first supporter of Nietzsche, Georg Brandes, understood in his essay, Aristocratic Radicalism. He hit the nail on the head there, as Nietzsche himself realized. It is that tough, hard, elitist aspect of Nietzsche. Really the main thrust, the backbone of Nietzsche. That is the real Nietzsche, the tough Nietzsche. And when the first English translations came out, those translators, first Alexander Till, and then Thomas Common, and then Anthony Ludovici, and then the great Oscar Levy, whose edition, the first edition of the collected works in English, which remains the only collected edition in English still, that collected edition, which he, Levy, masterfully edited and stood back as an editor should, and hired a whole panoply of translators, great men like Ludovici, like Thomas Common, like Kennedy, like Zimmern, and so many others, who were themselves Nietzscheans. In Zimmern's case, she actually knew Nietzsche. They lived and breathed the same kind of air that Nietzsche lived and breathed. They understood him. They saw the world in the way that he saw the world, and they understood his philosophy. And yes, when Nietzsche's family set up the Nietzsche Archive, what a great blessing for humanity that was. When all his work was put under one roof in the Nietzsche Archive, the Nietzsche Archive authorized Levy's translations. They are still the only authorized translations. And those translations are the lifeblood of tough Nietzscheanism. If one reads those translations and the commentaries therein, and if one looks at the books written by those translators and editors at the same time, in that same period, the books of Ludovici or Common or Kennedy or Levy, if one looks at those, one builds up that picture of what tough Nietzscheanism really is, the early 20th century reception of Nietzsche in England, That is tough Nietzscheanism. And of course, we know with the world wars that there was a campaign against Nietzsche. And I think that similar campaign is still around today, because we know that in Italy in the 1920s and in Germany in the 1930s, that Nietzsche was taken up by political theorists and thinkers and actors, that his works were drawn upon by those movements. We know that. And we know that the great Martin Heidegger in Germany in the 1930s did a great series of lectures on the book The Will to Power. Great lectures. But after 1945, tough Nietzscheanism came to an end. The Nietzsche archive was closed down. The collected works were usurped. And there was a concerted campaign to rid the toughness from Nietzsche, to make Nietzsche soft, to make him liberal, to make him existential. The family, the Nietzsche archive were damned, unfairly introduced. And since 1945, there has been a general current to soften Nietzsche, to liberalize Nietzsche, to bowdlerize Nietzsche, to defang Nietzsche, to take the backbone out of Nietzsche. But that's not easy to do, because those old translations in the English-speaking world are still there. They still exist. In fact, they're sought after. And Nietzsche's own books, published in his own lifetime, are still there. Every word is still there. And so, tough Nietzscheanism will be rekindled as it is today. We are starting to see a sea change today. And that's why my group, Tough Nietzscheans on Facebook, had to be started. I had to start a forum, a group, where we could express tough Nietzscheanism without being banned, censored, and driven out. That's why I started it. And that's why it will go on.